In this video, I will show you how I discovered which drawing exercises were the most popular with you, and I will show you how to do the drawing exercise, and I will discuss whether and how much you should do the drawing exercise yourself. You are probably wondering as you see the video whether you can do this drawing exercise yourself, and I have good news for you. While these drawings look really cool, they are easier to do than you think. That is because you don't have to stay as accurate as true to form. You can exaggerate it a little bit too much or too little, and it still looks cool. But before I continue, please do check out my newsletter, where I send out an article every Sunday with interesting tips for artists, along with great drawing exercises like this one. A while back, I was working on my website, the Practice Drawing This, and I was constantly changing things because the focus of the website is drawing exercises, and I had these resources related to 3D models, etc. And I thought, well, that's not what it's about anymore. So the pages were still there, but you could not get to the pages from my main site. Basically, there were no links to these pages. But Google had remembered those pages, and eventually, maybe 1 or 2 years later or something, I started getting emails from the Google Search Console, where it said that the most popular page on my website was now this 3D cube, rotating 3D cube that you could use for drawing reference. And it was odd because you could not reach that page from my main website anymore, but Google had remembered it. And sure enough, what I did was I Googled it myself. And if you, I can show you here on screen, if you type 3D cube model, then the very first item that it finds is actually my website. It's the very first item is Practice Drawing This, which is insane if you think about it, because I had done nothing to get it there. But apparently, if you give Google enough time, it will find the audience for it for you. And that's really weird, but it's really cool also. And another page on my website that was really popular was about perspective grids. And that's again something to do with 3D and with placing objects in space. It is a tool that allows you to define perspective grids, and it's fun to play with, and it's actually very educational, but that's for another video. And then later on, I had made lots of posts on Pinterest for Practice Drawing This, and I hadn't looked at it for a while, and I checked it out again. And one of the things I can show you here on screen, one of the things I suddenly noticed was that the top posts by far were posts where you could see 3D organic forms, 3D forms, etc. So people were apparently putting those on boards, pin boards, and repinning those posts and remembering it apparently for reference or inspiration. So there again, 3D forms and organic forms were really popular. So it kind of drove home the point that people, when looking for drawing exercises, they're really inspired by organic forms. And that's a funny thing that apparently happens with those platforms. You have like Google, what Google can do for your website, or what Pinterest can do for images, or YouTube can do for videos. Those are all platforms where evergreen content can work, where, if you leave something there for a year or 2 years, suddenly those platforms can find an audience for it if it's there, which is really cool. That's not the case with, for example, Instagram. There, the platform will only show your posts for the next 2 days or so. So if you want to stay on the feed of people's feed, then you have to keep creating posts, and you have to stay on the treadmill. There's no such thing as an evergreen on Instagram. That's one thing that makes Pinterest and YouTube and Google so cool, is that you can actually have evergreen content that actually can even be picked up after a few years and suddenly become really popular. So clearly, the exercise we're talking about here is organic forms. So I wanted to discuss the exercise itself. There are a few different ways you can go about it. Let's start with the simplest one. You in other videos I described how you can draw the basic primitive forms. Those are a sphere, a cylinder, a cone, and a box. Now the very first thing you can do if you want to create organic forms is to deform those shapes. So you can sort of squeeze them. It's a ball, you can squeeze a ball, or you can, it's as if you put the form between your thumb and finger and then press and squeeze it. And if you do that, then it will bulge somewhere because the volume has to go somewhere. And by the same token, you can also stretch it, and then it's as if you take two sides of the form and then pull, and assume that it's a sort of a rubbery substance, and then you can sort of create organic forms that way. That's the first and a simple one to do it. Another thing you can do is define an action line, as you can see on the screen with these arrows, and you can lay the form, the primitive form, along the line of action, the action line. That's another way of deforming it to give that form basically a gesture, I suppose. Another approach you can take is to merge forms. So you can see here that I merged some spheres, or a sphere with a box. This is a useful thing. Becomes useful if you for example, want to simplify a human form with these primitive forms. You can have, for example, a lower arm is a sphere with a box. Basically, you can simplify it that way. So that's useful. It's a fun thing to do. Also, you draw two forms overlapping in 2 dimensions on the page. It overlaps, and you try to blend them together. And it's actually a surprisingly fun thing to do. And it's very useful for if you want to create human forms. You can also, there's another thing you can do. You can take a line, a 2-dimensional shape, and you can pull that along an action line. That also yields cool results. And you can also change that shape. That can change along the action line, and you can create things like a tail, for example, or that sort of thing. And another thing you can try is to actually really start using it to suggest real-world objects. I'm not. That's, I think, more a subject for another video, but I'm showing you some examples here. There's a shark, and there's simplified cartoon heads, because cartoons can also be simplified with or drawn or constructed from 3-dimensional organic forms. So these are drawing exercises. You can see the main thing to keep in mind is what helps is have contour lines, because the contour lines help show how the thing is oriented. It's the contour lines across the shapes. It just makes the form easier to read, and it's a good practice to try to draw them correctly, to try to draw, for example, ellipses correctly. It's a good practice. And I forgot to mention, I think you can also skewer objects, and that actually kind of only makes sense if you use a box, because it's a ball and or a cylinder or a cone. They are cylindrically symmetrical, so that it doesn't do much if you try to skew them. But a box you can skew in all sorts of ways. So there's some drawings here for that too, as examples. And so to continue, basically, should you do this exercise and how often? Well, I'm a bit ambivalent about this, because I think it is an important exercise. It's very useful to be able to do this. I'm going to discuss this in other videos, but I mean, the old masters also really simplified human form with basic forms, and it's just a good exercise to. It's useful. It's a different way of looking at perspective, because at the end of the day, all perspective is about placing objects in space, and this can be a way for you to do it, basically. So this can be a different way of looking at perspective. and that's a fundamental that's useful to have under your belt as an artist. The worry I have is that if you practice fundamentals too much, it can become really boring, and you have to sort of you do well. This exercise can be fun, but if you do it too much, eventually you start feeling like you want to do something else, and that's listen to that voice in your head. Really follow your muse and start doing the thing you want to do, and just let it go. Then, having fun drawing is more important. Having said that, this drawing exercise is actually also fun when done in moderation. Mark making is fun, and the results really look cool, and that can be really satisfying and really motivating. It can really make you want to draw again the next day. So that basically summarizes the video. Again, I have a newsletter at Practice Drawing This. I hope you will check it out. And also something to check out is maybe my other videos on basic forms, primitive forms first, the sphere, the cylinder, the cone, the box. Maybe try to do those videos, try to do those exercises first. I have some other videos about that. Okay, thank you for your time. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.